afternoon, ladies. Thanks for joining us today. We had a topic come up, and you may be thinking about it, you may not be thinking about it, because we are in February, and what we're going to talk about today is extended school year that takes place over the course of the summer for our kids. So that's our topic today, and it should be being brought to your attention with your kids in the next month, and be signing a NORUP by no later than March 31st, stating that your child will be attending or will not be attending extended school year. So that's our topic today,
I
ladies.
can't believe this is like walking into like one of those like a big box store, and the bathing suits are out already.
Mhm.
Like, I am ready for summer to be here, but I also don't want to talk about sun and fun when it is, let me check the weather, 22 degrees outside.
I'm not ready to think about bathing suits.
No, I mean, I'd love to. I'm excited for the summer, but don't torture me by making me think about it, and then I got to go shovel my car out. Jill, you were just getting ready to ask a question before we started.
Okay, so I know you guys have experience with extended school year. I have two boys that qualify for it, but I've always been afraid. I don't know like what the ratio of like the teacher to student is. There paras there? Is it actual schoolwork? Because when I've talked to people, it was a lot of like field trips and fun time. And don't get me wrong, we all need a break. They need to stay on a schedule, but I was telling Melissa my biggest fear was the one day they were going to take all the kids swimming. Well, there might be like 30 kids, and so how many teachers are with them? Or like, is my kid just thrown to the wolves and hope he can float? I need to know what's going on. And like I said, is there requirements? Is this like a state thing? Like, I need to know more before I let them go.
I think sometimes our schools would like, and I've had this happen in the past, where they dictated what extended school year was going to look like, but it is a direct reflection of their IEP and their goals. So it should suit that. It shouldn't be one size fits all, and this is what we are doing for extended school year for everybody across the board. It is an extension of that IEP, which is individual. So my suggestion to you would be, find out when you can have your meeting. If they haven't reached out to you yet, you can reach out to them and ask, when are we going to have an IEP meeting for extended school year? Get that scheduled. They should be reaching out to you no later than February 28th to schedule the meeting. By March 31st, you should be receiving a NORUP stating that during that meeting, all of you came to the conclusion that yes, the child needs it and is going to attend, or no, they're not going to attend and don't need it. It should be very much based on what your individual child needs and what the purpose of them having an extended school year looks like. So the first thing I always think about whenever I had to deal with it was right before we start winter break, when we're dealing with Thanksgiving and we're going into Christmas, like November to January is like chaos. So when we get back and we're in January and we've had all these snow days, virtual days, we're off for the holidays, did our child regress? Did they forget something that you were working on? Like, they were doing really well and they were meeting their goals. One of two things: they were meeting their goals, and now this interruption of the holiday break, that is a really clear indication. If we get to going back to school in January and we're like, oh, we got to kind of start over. Things that we did have, they're kind of lost, and we're doing a lot of repetition and we're trying to catch up on those goals. Or we had goals and we still weren't meeting them prior to that break. As a parent, you should be able to look at that and say, they need more consistency. This break over the summer is not going to be helpful to them. They are going to regress. They're not going to do well. And then we're going to go back to school in September And it's like everything that happened last year is gone. And it doesn't have to be that severe, but it can be those things that we're looking for. Like what were we doing that we were doing really well? And now it's just gone and we started over from scratch sometimes.
Yeah. Go ahead, Tracy.
No, I was going to say, in looking, if your child is on an IEP and has that already established, your school district should be also sending home those progress reports that are directly associated with their goals from their IEP. And I remember distinctly that they sent Brianna's progress report from her IEP that she had not made any progress towards those goals. And it was right before extended school year was going to be determined. And so I'm looking at that progress report, and then I get the letter saying she did not qualify for extended school year that year. And I go, how ironic that you said she didn't qualify, but you just sent home the progress report that said she did not meet those goals. And quite frankly, she felt back. And so I also agree with you when you talk about what the structure of extended school year is, because I too have had my daughter go to extended school year where they're watching movies, they're coloring, like there was nothing that was really structured to the point where you're working on that regression. And I'm like, so I scheduled a meeting with the extended school or the special education director the following year to have that discussion about what we saw, what Brianna saw, like what my daughter saw in the classroom, and how she said it was not any kind of school setting, right? So kind of really having that discussion with the teacher, with the special education director as to what does your extended school year look like? Do you have like a curriculum that you're going to follow? You know what I mean? So I definitely have been in both places.
I think so. Thinking about like the small town where my kiddos were, it was like a summer babysitting program where the kiddos would go to the park and they might go swimming, where it did seem like a lot of play. Now looking at knowing that my daughter worked for ESY, my daughter's a teacher, so she worked for ESY at a couple places, and they did in the morning they had like earlier in, because it's usually this abbreviated day, maybe it's like 4 hours, right? So in the morning they started off, they did some math, they did some reading that they needed to, and then they did get the kiddos outside, so they didn't feel like they were spending their whole summer indoors. I think that our kiddos can feel like they're being punished, knowing that all their friends are out having fun and I'm being punished, I have to go to school. So I will say that I think that from the outside, it can look like the kids are just messing around and it's just like this cheap version of a summer camp. But, then looking at it from seeing the teacher's perspective of how can I make math fun for the kids? And they did something where they wrote math problems on toilet paper. And the more math problems they could do, the longer the toilet paper was. And then they wrapped themselves up like mummies. I don't know. They spent like a lot of time, and the kids, I think she was working with like second graders or third graders, gave input into, this would be fun if we. So because it's not so regimented like the school year maybe, where they've got to, some schools now have these canned lesson plans that the teachers like just almost read from. They were able to be way more creative, way more hands-on. The kids got to interact with each other more, and it was learning but in a fun environment. So I do think that you can ask around and see what it's like, especially in a small town, if you do know people and you could kind of ask around. So tell me about, and a great question to ask in any IEP meeting is, so what does that look like? And that's just the phrase. So tell me, what will that look like? How will that look in my child's day, in my child's class? So I would say, think about the programs that are offered, because they do say they have to be customized for your child. Realistically, they probably are not. I'm not saying that that's right. I'm just gonna tell it like it is, so parents aren't shocked. But if your child is getting like occupational therapy, physical therapy, or speech services, this could be an opportunity to interact with their peers in a more natural environment where they're talking to new kiddos who don't know each other. Where like physical therapy, if they're getting PT services, maybe it's they're doing more physical activities where they're outside playing jump rope, or something more physical where they're practicing some of those skills, climbing, whatever. So it could be school, but a more fun school. The other options, though, that are available, so let's say you do want your child to continue to make progress on, if your child is learning to read and they're working on sound blends, one of the things that ESY services can include are some take-home materials. Now, that realistically may put the parent as a teacher, and you may not want to argue with your kiddo over the summer, like let's look for the SH sound, or words, whatever. But that's a really good option. And in looking at the teacher's desk guide from Patton, a resource we'll share in the comments, so be sure to look for it. Take-home instructional materials, behavioral or other training for parents and program staff. So we'll include these resources, but this is a great opportunity for you as the parent. And I don't think we talk about this enough when we talk about IEPs, and I'm going to have to make a note to talk about this, that you could have in your IEP, there is a whole section for how will parents and school staff be trained on the child's disability. So if your child has a disability like, let's say, Tourette's, that maybe people in your school just don't know about, there is an opportunity for you to push in and make sure that the staff is trained on it. So if your child does have behavior challenges, kind of thinking back when my children were younger, I had a kiddo who just didn't do good in an unstructured environment. This would be a fantastic opportunity to ensure that summer staff, and maybe even their upcoming school year staff, had the opportunity to be trained.
I think too,
it's just a reminder that summertime, the reason why our kids are going to extended school year is because of that regression, the possibility of that long extended time that they're going without school. So like Melissa was talking about, that November and December, there's a lot of breaks in there, but think about all the summertime then, that they're going to go. And I remember, it would be like, okay, you're going to go back to school and you're kind of having to redo the grade that you just graduated from. And it's like, now we've slipped back farther and farther. So I think keeping records of your child's progress throughout the year is a good thing to do, so that you can kind of gauge where they might need to go and what they might need to do when they're going back.
I think too, whenever we're looking at, and this is a really good opportunity, when we get those reports and we know for ourselves, we've had our eyes on our kids, we see sometimes that they struggle after coming back from a break, and it's taking them not just a couple days, a couple hours, it's taken a couple weeks to get them back in the swing of things. that is even something to consider to be added to the IEP, that when there are breaks for school, not even extended school year for the summer, but during winter break, holiday break, that you think about, is there things we can be doing so we don't have such a difficult time transitioning back into having class and working on things. So I had learned a really good lesson from that myself with my child. So at the beginning of the year, we were able to have in the IEP that during those breaks, I would have work sent home of things that I could do while they were off and work on just key things that we couldn't let go for that time period that they were off. And I always say, like, you think about when you were a child, summer felt like it was forever. It was months and months and months. Now, as adults, we know it's like nothing. It's so quick. For that long period in a child's mind, if they can have that little bit of time where they still have to go somewhere, they still have to get up early, they have to present themselves, sometimes that's just as important. Having that repetition, you may have a child that doesn't transition well. So if we finally get out of school and now we have 3 months of no school, then you tell them August 30th they're going to start school tomorrow, it may not go over so well. So, there's a lot of reasons to do it or not to do it. And one thing I would want to encourage parents, the number one thing that you do not want to ask a school for or use the language is like, this is my break, this is respite for me, because that is not what ESY is structured to be. The language cannot be anything like that,
I think, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Don't say, I need my child to catch up. They're so far behind. I need them to go to school over the summer so that they can catch up to their classmates. So that's the other thing to say. This is not, I don't know what I'm going to do with my child over the summer because it's impossible to find a babysitter because their behavior is so outrageous. Don't say that. Melissa said, don't say, I need a break. Don't say, they need to catch up or they need to make progress. You want to really highlight how they're working on an emerging skill. And Melissa, when we were talking right before we hit record, you had mentioned if they're in a multi-step process and they're at like step 5, and then, when they get to step 7, they'll have mastered it, depending upon what it is. If they're toileting as a child with a disability and this is going to cause a problem for them, if they're just catching on to being able to tap out sounds, those are things that you're going to look for, is that emerging skill, which is kind of hard to think about an emerging skill in February or March for the end of the school year. But those are that's the language that you want to use. I am just now in February and March getting my child so that I don't have to fight with them for 20 minutes to get them on the bus every day. So, you use that language. So it's regression. So we were doing a really good job with their behavior right before the school break, and now because of the holiday break, like you said, your kids were off for like 193 days for Christmas, something like that, close?
Yes, very close.
Right. So like if your kids are off for like 17 days for the Christmas break because of like snow and stuff, you're going to want to highlight. Then it took me like another 3 weeks of fighting with them to get them back up in the morning and on the bed or on the bus because they didn't want to go back to school. So some of those might be like behavior things or, anxiety when they were off over that Christmas break. Maybe they only had 9 days off. But then for the next 2 weeks, every morning, your child started to exhibit those anxious behaviors again of who's going to get me off the bus? Who's going to come get me if school gets let out early? Where maybe they're asking all those questions again. So keep information like that. But you got to be careful if you really want your child to have extended school year. You have to be careful about your language.
Well, I know one big thing is somebody mentioned it. My boys felt like they were being punished because they are behind, because they have a para. Like, you know what I mean? That was their punishment for not being the good students. And then, so what happened was they've always both, but then last summer, for some reason, only my youngest son qualified. And he was not, like, first of all, I've never sent them. And he was not having it. He was not going to go anywhere. He was going to be the only one punished. His brother wasn't even going to get punished too. So he was the only one getting punished by having to go to school over the summer. And I felt really bad because, like, that's their break. Like, my boys, school is not easy for them. School is like punishment every day, like getting up in the morning, getting dressed, getting ready. We have breakdowns every day. So that's their break. So they really, truly were like devastated with just the thought of going over the summer. And then when I read that, and I talked to a couple of the teachers, they're like, oh, don't worry, on Thursdays we go swimming. And I'm like, now I'm like having a heart attack. So that's why I didn't know how many teachers is there. Is the special education teachers there? Or is it just any teacher that wants to pick up? Is it, how many paras are with them? How many kids are in the classroom? Like that gives me the anxiety then.
So it is, I will say, the nice thing about this summer is that there's smaller class sizes. Always, Pennsylvania, has a great standard where they do have to be highly qualified teachers. My daughter, like I said, last year did ESY. She is a certified teacher. You can ask, but it's not a free for all. It's not like Disney Channel might like want kids to think where there's like no, you watch all those like cartoons and stuff or TV shows, there's like no adult supervision. There is. And the same thing, if they're taking the kiddos swimming, not only are they staffed appropriately, but they have to have lifeguards there. So they are supervised. Obviously, though, if you have concerns, ask. By all means, ask. I don't think we ever want to encourage parents to just go along and trust and have faith, that everything will be fine. I think there's nothing wrong with asking. But also, I think that what I'm hearing you say is that you think that the summer's important to give the kids a break.
Mm-hmm.
You've shared with us in the past how like your kiddos are outside all summer and they're playing around and, you've got a ton of land and you've got horses and stuff. And so your kiddos are really active over the summer. And I think ESY has to be a decision for every parent to make on your own. Like, I'll tell you, often ESY starts at, maybe they'll start at like 9:30, 10. So it may be a later start. It's not generally a full school day. So let's say it's like 9:30 to 1 o'clock. I work, right? Mm-hmm. Some places don't offer transportation. So that's great if you're a stay-at-home parent, or if you could swing something so somebody could drop your kid off and you could pick them up, or, swing transportation. If you're at work and it's like, okay, great, who's going to make sure the kids get on the bus? Who's going to stay with the kids until they get on the bus? And then who's going to be there with them when they get off? ESY, the way it is made, may not fit into your life. So you do have to make that determination on your own. It does say in the teacher's guide to ESY that they can also be tutorials. So you can say to the school, what you're offering is not going to work for us, and maybe these are the reasons why. And so you can ask that. Again, this is if you're going to determine the need first and then determine where it's going to happen. So if your child needs work on math facts, if your child needs, reading progress, whatever, you can absolutely ask them to put resources together. And, maybe it's access to a platform and the school pays for the platform that your child is able to access over the summer or for like a 1 month period over the summer. And that could be something that the school provides, that 1 month membership, and maybe a Chromebook so that your kiddos can get online. And I think it also becomes challenging once your kiddos are older. Because maybe when they're a little younger, they don't mind going and hanging out with their friends, whatever. But when they get to be like middle school, high school, they're going to be like, I don't want to do ESY. So that's where you can get creative. And as a parent, let's say that it's during transition time, and they're just starting to look at maybe they're working on their social skills, and they're doing some career exploration. Can they do some job shadowing? Is there some kind of employment training? Can they have some assessments that they do over the summer to determine where their interests are, or watch some YouTube videos of like the day in the life of a nurse? So, I mean, you can absolutely be creative. Of course, you're going to be taking that on yourself then to make sure that gets done.
I wanted to point out something too, because Pennsylvania has so many rural areas for transportation, that talk to your school district if transportation is an issue. I know in the very beginning when my daughter would be qualified for extended school year, we would be required to take her. We are not very close to the school district. It's a jaunt to go down there, until the next special education director came in, and then transportation was included. So definitely talking to the special education director about transportation, because if it is a need for the student per the guidelines, it is something that they should be providing that student.
I think it's very interesting that sometimes it's presented to us as parents that this extended school year is something that it's going to be happening in kind of one size fits all, but it's not. It's just like your IEP. You got to have those conversations, ask those questions. Don't be afraid to say, hey, I'm worried about this. I need to know what this looks like. And as Christina has said many times, when we look at something on an IEP, we should be able to close our eyes and see it and picture it happening. So if they're presenting something to you with no information attached to it of what the days should look like and what kind of skills they're going to be working on, and then that's not efficient enough for you to make a good decision, So you should be able to look at it concrete and say, okay, I can picture this happening this way, or talk it through. What can work that I can do at home? Well, I thank you so much for coming today and discussing this. And if you want to talk about it more, please feel free